Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Adopting the New Norm of Remote Work. My name is Mo Escarnia, CIO at BPM, and I'll be your moderator for this webinar. For many of us, the ability to be productive in this new remote workforce norm depends on a few key factors, and those are the ability to effectively communicate with peers, customers, and partners, and our ability to readily access essential tools, resources, and systems. Today, we'll be discussing how all of you can help preserve productivity and collaboration while maintaining the security and data integrity of your organizations, all while protecting the company culture. I'm excited to introduce the fantastic panel we have lined up for you today. Jill Pappenheimer, partner of our HR consulting group, Michael Salai, partner of our managed IT services group, and last but not least, Sarah Lynn, partner of our IT security advisory group. Just a reminder that we'll be taking questions for our panel throughout the session. If you do have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A function inside the app. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jill.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to introduce myself before we get started with the discussion. I lead the HR consulting practice at BPM, as Mo mentioned. Our team supports all types of businesses and nonprofits, from small to large, enterprise entities, from complete outsource of HR to consulting work with building cultures and creating teams and strategic initiatives across the board. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about managing from a people standpoint the remote workforce. I'm going to give you some tips and some very tactical thoughts to help you really rethink how we manage people in this time. And would like to now turn it over to Mike to introduce himself.
Good morning, everybody. Michael Salai. I'm the partner of the Managed IT Service Group. I've been in IT for 20 years and helping small, medium-sized businesses outsource their IT. We do support services to security and network implementations, a lot of other things. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Sarah Lynn. She can introduce herself.
Hey guys, this is Sarah. I'm the partner of the IT Security Advisory Group. In the IT Security Advisory Group, we provide advice, of course, and guidance for our customers that are seeking compliance, audit prep, and other security advisory, as well as we have a 24/7, about 365 security operations center that spans globally, but is here in the US. I have provided IT security experience, including business continuity, risk management, advisory, operations, technology engineering for over 30 years. And the verticals that we mostly work in are high-tech, banking and financial, insurance, telecommunications, medical, and retail. So we're working on all sorts of platforms, even the cloud, SaaS, PaaS, IaaS platforms. So I'll be sharing some information with you today. And back to you, Jill, to get started.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so welcome to our pandemic, right? And how we, in this very, very unique time, support our people. And what I'm going to talk about today is I'm really going to give you a spectrum of things to think about in terms of practices and policies, but also very importantly around management and good management at this time, this unique time. Just a thought before I get started into the meat of this is, you know, that if remote managing of people is really done well, it can be a game changer. And knowing that this environment is here to stay to some degree, probably less than it is today, but to some degree, it's really important to get it right. And so what does that look like? So let's jump in. First and foremost, it's about people first. So what does that mean? Well, people have intense anxiety, stress, are feeling lonely. It's so interesting when you get on video conferences and you just know that behind the faces, there's situations where people are dealing with parents, children are home, need to be attended to, this anxiety level of needing to engage with other people if you're alone in your apartment or your home. There's a lot going on for people right now. And you have to maintain that thought of people first. What does that mean? Well, so for an example of that, it's important to, and sorry, there's of course somebody mowing grass now that I'm getting started here, so I apologize for the background noise. It's important to allow people to talk about connection first. So we start all our meetings saying connection before content. So what's on people's minds? Allow people to talk about what is important to them right now, what they're dealing with. Give them an opportunity to connect. Along those same lines, we really want people to feel healthy, right? And engaged. We want people to be getting up and to be exercising, both mentally and physically. So on a mental standpoint, we really encourage the expanded EAP programs, so employee assistance programs through your broker, your benefit broker. This is an opportunity for people to connect one-on-one with therapists. And, you know, it may be included in your plan, your benefit plan. It may not. You may have to pay separately for it, but it's something to check out and to think about. It's a nice addition for employees to have that. And then exercise. We all need to get up and move our legs, our bodies, keep our brains working and crisp, and on top of it, we need to move. I know I'm sitting all day long. I have to get up and remember to move around. And so let's just switch to this next slide real quick. And here is a list of opportunities for people to get yoga or participate in different classes, whether that's aerobic or stretching, meditation. So this list is one I just wanted you to have available, and we will be distributing content after this session so that you can download this, make this available to your employees. Okay. So next up, what practices should you be thinking about in terms of dealing with remote workers? So as I mentioned earlier, the aspect around people feeling like they need support, whether that's mental, whether that's connectedness with other people, really want to encourage the visual connectedness. So if there is opportunity and bandwidth with your network to do video conferencing, I highly, highly recommend that as much as possible to allow people to see each other, to connect through this visual content. I know some companies don't have that kind of bandwidth, but if there is that opportunity, you want to encourage meetings to be visual meetings. You get that social clue through those video conferencing, and it's key when really doing brainstorming and complex ideas. In addition, you want to give people the opportunity to have some kind of norms, some kind of rituals. Maybe set up an opportunity to have water cooler visits in chat sessions, or a happy hour with families where people's creative talents can show through. Maybe you have a pianist on your team. Allow those people to show their individual strengths. Again, a time unlike any other, where if we can bring that additional interpersonal connectedness through our work, all the better. And it's an opportunity to get to know people at another level. So try to establish some kind of norms to ensure that people are getting that connectedness. And in addition to that, in this next section on communicating, I want to just highlight that when you're communicating, whether it's video conferencing, whether it's email, whether it's phone calls, maybe you're on Slack, think about and maybe suggest this to employees that we have our norms around. If you're dealing with a complex issue, get on a video conference. If your communication is not urgent, maybe it's a small matter, email is fine. If there's a miscommunication, get on the phone or get on a video conference. So it's maybe something that you as a leader or HR wants to communicate that as a norm throughout the organization, that this is our practice. If you're based on that kind of communication, we're going to communicate in certain ways. Okay, more about communication. So how and when do I communicate with my remote team? So first and foremost, you want to communicate more often than you have in the past. We need that. So I recommend weekly touch calls, whether that's with direct reports, whether that's teams connecting. Try to make those more frequent. And help employees to maintain boundaries with their work. I'm sure you've noticed that there's this continuum now. People are starting to communicate through the weekends. Conference calls are on Sunday. I really want to encourage that you keep those boundaries through Monday through Friday, maybe even delay sending emails so that it's during work hours, so that there's that line between weekend and work week. Encourage also company-led check-ins. Leadership should try to be checking in with employees more often. Understand where the company is going, even though there's a lot of unknowns during this time. Really want to suggest that those communications happen more often. All right, going on to policies. So policies, whether we want to change remote policies now, whether we want to add policies now, during this initial sort of getting used to the crisis, we were not encouraging changing policies. I think there is this aspect of expenses. So this will probably come up in the next two sections, but employees are now using equipment at home, and there may be an added expense for employees, and it's important to be sensitive to that added expense for employees while we may be furloughing or reducing hours. And so if the money is there and there's an opportunity to make really clear that coverage is there, I encourage that to get communicated. So again, if the funds are there, then let people know that maybe you're going to offer a flat rate for coverage of cell phones, for coverage of printer inkjet, the ink or paper, or maybe they need a printer. Generally, those items need to be covered by the company. There's these issues right now. We have a client that just is not in a position to cover those kind of equipment costs. And I think probably the IRS is going to turn their head during this unique time. But in general, if you can cover those kind of expenses, we're encouraging, rather than having people itemize each one, maybe cover a flat rate, although either is acceptable. And then make sure you're offering timekeeping. Not offering, but make sure that you're addressing timekeeping policies around non-exempt versus exempt, and make sure those are clear. People should still be taking their breaks and lunches if they're non-exempt, and making sure they're tracking that time, etc. Okay, going on to the next slide. So I can talk about this content on this slide for the next hour. So I'm just going to give you a quick and dirty, and just FYI, I am talking about this content in an hour presentation on the 29th that is being scheduled through Eventbrite. It's focused for nonprofits, but certainly anyone can attend. And you know, managing remote people right now is considered good management if it's done appropriately. And the keys to this are to ensure that you're having ongoing conversations between managers and employees. So like I said earlier, employees need that connectedness. They need to have that opportunity to know how they're doing, to be clear on what they're doing. And so those one-on-ones are key. So having a structure to do that and making sure that there's regular scheduled time for those one-on-one check-ins are very important. What else is important for good management? Well, so are people clear on the work they're doing? Are they owning the work they're doing, or are they being told that they have to do that work? So there's some nuances there, right? People should be feeling a part of owning the work that they have. Managers might feel a need to do some micromanaging now because they don't really know what employees are working on since they're not in front of them and they're not having that face-to-face contact. I encourage that not happen, right? That micromanagement, as much as that tendency I think is there, you want to resist that. So if you don't micromanage, how do you know the work's getting done? How do you know that people are being accountable for what they're doing? Well, I really suggest that there's an opportunity to put practices in place around performance conversations, around setting clear goals for people. And not just clear goals, but measurable goals. So that's a key component during this time, is to ensure that employees understand what they're responsible for, but also have measurement criteria so they know when they're doing well and the supervisor knows when they're doing well, so the supervisor doesn't feel like they have to micromanage the employee. So put tools in place. Put performance management tools in place, and maybe strategic management tools in place where goals are aligned to the strategy and the initiatives that the organization has. There's a tool that we use called 2020 Insights. The product's called Insights. The website is 2020insights.net. I don't want to be in a position where I'm selling anything here, but it's what we use. And it keeps that connectedness and that ability to see where the organization is in terms of initiatives and where we're going as in a company, but also connecting people to the work that they're doing and the organization initiatives as a whole. And that also ensures people are getting regular feedback, which is so key. So I know I'm hitting my limit here. I want to give everybody else an opportunity to speak. So I'll stop at this point, but we'll be able to answer questions at the end. And passing on to Mike.
Thank you, Jill. Hi, I'm Mike Solai. I'm hoping everybody is home and safe and their families all safe. So let's talk about using technology efficiently. So we start off is control your environment. When the pandemic first hit, I saw our customers and a lot of other friends' companies, when dealing with technology, it was, putting out fires. Get people working, getting them onto the systems, whatever it took. So now that everything is starting to come into a new norm, it's time to kind of take a step back and look at, is this sustainable long-term? You might have employees using their home computers. All of your applications, all of your IT resources still might be locked in your office, wherever that is. And so let me talk about like some historical systems. So normally legacy companies, they'll have what they call a Microsoft Active Directory server. And these servers are sitting inside your office. They're serving your files, maybe your applications, all of your employees' laptops, desktops are connected to these servers, and it's managing the security, the passwords, everything. And so now that we have to really look at how to make sure your employees are being effective, not just in the office when you guys go back, but maybe potentially more at home. You know, we might be in a shelter in place again, you know, next in the fall and the winter. So let's take a look about how IT manages these resources and manages these devices. So the first thing that I would say is try to eliminate any and all on-prem equipment. So if you have that old server that's running, you know, your accounting package, or you have an old file server, look at solutions to get those out of your office. Look at Microsoft Azure's cloud. Look at AWS's or Amazon's cloud, even Google's cloud. Treat the cloud as, you know, that's going to enable your remote workforce. So now IT's perspective, like, okay, so we have moved everything to the cloud, and how are we going to manage these laptops that we have for all the employees? If you were forced to have employees use their home computers, this is a time to replace that process and maybe issue everybody's laptops. You know, employees should be working on company-owned equipment. And how do you manage those equipment? So for most of our clients that are a remote first kind of mentality, we move to what they call an MDM, mobile device management. And what does mobile device management do for you? It allows you to control that workstation no matter where it is, be it the office, be it their home, or, you know, traveling. One day we all travel again, I promise. But and the key part is you want to set security policies. You have this workstation, you know, or have this laptop out and about. You want to control the password complexity. You want to make sure that you're controlling the operating system security patches. The one thing that we have noticed is since the pandemic started, hackers have not stopped. If anything, they've actually kind of ramped up. You know, more viruses are going out, more exploits are being, you know, taken advantage of. So staying on top of your security patches is really important. And with an MDM, you can also push applications. If you have applications that you need installed on your employees' computers, you can use this MDM to push out an application. And then you have a single source for all of your assets that the company owns. You can go into your MDM, you can list all of your laptops, phones, tablets, and manage them right there. To go one step further, if anything is lost, you can actually do a remote wipe. You can kill the device. If, you know, unfortunately, if you have to let an employee go and you need to lock their workstation to protect your information, you can do that with an MDM. So some of the more popular MDMs that we like using, so Microsoft has one, it's called Intune, and then wrapping that with another product called Azure Active Directory can protect your Microsoft-based computers and also give you that MDM feature of being able to push applications. If you're a Mac shop, Jamf is the most popular MDM for Mac. And again, it, you know, lets you set policy, lets you push applications, lets you control that device. And then something for organizations that are looking to save money If you are a G Suite shop using Gmail, using Google Drive, I highly recommend that you look at Chromebooks. They're a very reasonably priced option. Google has built in their own MDM where you can manage that device, push applications, and it is significantly cheaper than a Mac. I put that on the presentation here. And so if you're looking to having to deploy a lot of laptops and the cost of buying Macs or PCs are overwhelming in your Google shop, Chromebooks is an excellent option that you should look at. Let's go to the next slide. So now that I've kind of addressed the fleet of machines that IT is going to be managing and your company's going to be managing, let's talk about applications. So, you know, my mentality is build on the cloud, build to be remote. Collaboration and communication, you know, for years and years, it has been kind of like driven into, you know, IT and business, you know, increased collaboration, increased communication. With an entirely remote workforce, this is more important than ever. You know, being in an office, it's really common to get up out of your desk, walk over to, you know, a colleague, your manager, and start talking about things. But how do you do that in a remote environment? So all of our customers, we usually put them into kind of two categories again. You're either kind of like a Microsoft shop or you're a Google shop. And it's important to look at the entire ecosystem of one of those two, you know, platforms. So if you're a Microsoft shop, that means that you're using, you know, Outlook, Microsoft Exchange Online, and it's really important to look at all the other offerings that Microsoft has, because Microsoft has done an extremely good job about tying all their products into each other. So Office Online. So with Microsoft's Office 365 offering, most people are buying it to download Office onto their computer. Well, if you're in an organization that's looking to save money, you can get a cheaper plan by just offering Office Online. And there's some really added benefits to that collaboration piece of it. So as by pushing Word, Excel, and other documents up into OneDrive, which is their cloud file storage system, you can actually have employees in remote locations working on the same document at the same time. They do give, Microsoft has built in the functionality of being able to do the same thing using OneDrive installed on your workstation and, you know, traditional Office that is installed on your workstation. But the real power is having all of that up online in Office 365. Taking advantage of SharePoint. You know, SharePoint used to be an extremely beast of an application for large enterprises, and as it's moved to Office 365, it's gotten a lot simpler. Small, medium-sized businesses can use it for teams and departments, message boards, you know, consolidating documentation, building projects, marketing campaigns. All of this stuff can be centralized on SharePoint. And you know, your team can work collaboratively together on a project. So the same thing happens in G Suite. So if your company uses G Suite, these ideas are probably not foreign, but you know, from Gmail to Google Docs, you know, Drive for Business, or I think they call it Shared Drive now, and Hangouts. And I should also say, Microsoft has really done a big push on Teams, which is their messaging. And it kind of can tie everything in. So both Hangouts and Teams has the ability to link a document, chat with your coworkers, and then go straight into a video chat. Like, hey, I'm working on this document. I have this idea. Can we chat? Can we get on a video face-to-face? And there it goes, the communication to the collaboration all comes together. And when you do when you're ready to jump on that call, make sure it's a video call. You know, that is the best thing you guys can do in a 100% remote environment. Having that face-to-face, you know, seeing those visual cues back and forth of somebody taking an idea or thinking, well, maybe that's not a great idea. So, you know, it just all starts to come together. And it's really important to start looking at other third-party apps, just to extend all of that collaboration. You know, Slack is a great one. You know, Slack is such a disruptor to the space that they're saying you don't have to communicate over email anymore because email is kind of slow. But Slack does a great job about integrating all of those applications. You know, Microsoft applications to G Suite applications to Zoom applications can all be done in a Slack environment. And to some of the other ones, Dropbox, Box, whatever, you know, I see a lot of organizations, they'll say, oh, well, we're going to bring Dropbox in or Box, and that's where we're going to move our file storage. And a lot of pieces that companies miss is if you actually link your Dropbox or your Box to your Office 365 online, you never have to leave the browser to edit a document. It's all done right there. And then to kind of talk about Jill's point, Salesforce, Zendesk, whatever professional application your workforce is using, you know, those are your measurables. You know, still have a sales staff. It's more important to capture all of their information that they're doing on a daily basis in their native application. Go to the next slide. So kind of brings me to my next topic, which isn't necessarily IT related, but where IT can help. So plan the work and work the plan. I love this story. This story is a Chinese construction company built a 57-story building in 19 days. Absolutely impossible if you think about it. But what really happened in this situation is the company started running up to their winter, and they had a rough winter, and they knew they couldn't do the construction, and so they were sidelined, sitting there waiting for winter to be over. And so what did they do? They just planned the work. They lined it all up, and they were saying, you know, first day of spring, you know, the ground thaws, and we're going to hit the ground running. They had everything sequenced, and boom, they were able to build this building in 19 days. So this time, step back, maybe go a little bit slower. Take a look at all of your employees' processes. How can these processes take advantage of technology? How can these processes be reflected in technology? Gosh, you know, we're a really paper-driven organization. Why are we so paper-driven? Should we look at, you know, DocuSign? You know, our project management is not really centralized. Should we look at third-party apps to help us manage our projects? You know, applications like Smartsheets or Monday or Asana or Microsoft Project. You know, task lists. Jira and Trello are really, you know, kind of tech-driven applications for the tech industry, but doesn't mean that Trello can't be used for, you know, a traditional company. It's they're complicated task lists. People can pick up tasks, and it's that micromanagement at a macro level. You're not really micromanaging your employees, but you're knowing what your employees are doing remotely. And again, Salesforce, Dynamics, this is, you know, as all your employees are putting their daily work into these tools, leverage these tools to pull reports, send them up to executive, report on the success of your teams. And really that you know, that kind of wraps it up for the IT side of things. which is a great transition into Sarah. Sarah, why don't you tell everybody how you can secure all this stuff?
Thanks, Mike. I like what you're saying about stepping back and planning. That really dives into part of what I'm going to discuss here. And I love what Jill's saying about remote management makes really good management, and making sure that we're consistent and firm. That's my message, consistent and firm. So next slide, please. Let's move right into it. So some of the questions that might be coming up for everyone, thinking that everybody's 100% remote here, are how do I support everyone's needs while being secure? I'm sure IT, Mike's team, even Mo's team are having to support lots of extra calls surrounding this time. Some are security related, some are very IT centric. How do I use this? How do I get this program? Where's my mouse? Where's my keyboard? Where's my monitor? All these things are coming together all at once. And how do we prioritize those? Well, generally, when something happens, if we don't have that plan that Mike was talking about, we go into very task-oriented mode. And the second part of that, though, is how do we secure that workforce that's been extended from the office to your home to make sure it's secure? And how do we, now that we've handled a good portion of everybody goes remote, how do we handle everybody's secure in their home workspace? So that's pretty important to think about, prioritizing everyone's needs and then making us secure. And then something that I'm sure crosses the mind of the business owner and the company is, how do we secure that machine at home, whether it's a company asset, a machine that someone's utilizing to get just email, or either their new Chromebook that they just ran out to Target to get last Tuesday before they ran out. What is it that we're going to do to make the employee not feel so personally invaded? Because they really don't have a choice right now. So there are many tools that we can utilize to check on the files, the data, the laptop, the network, if we need to, at someone's home. Like, for example, if somebody is an administrator, a system administrator, or has privileged access, they need a little more machine and network monitoring at home if you can do it. But there are other ways to do it too. There is training and acknowledgement. We may decide that we don't want to do extensive monitoring at the home network, but we want to train a little bit more about the security principles we want to utilize, the ones we always utilize in the office, better ones that we didn't utilize in the office, and what we want to do at home, and then have the employee or contractor acknowledge, yes, I will follow these rules. The last thing we want to do is really unintentionally leak data. We don't want to unintentionally leak any type of company data, employee data, anything. So these are all things we want to think about when we're all working at home. Next slide, please. But what about in a few weeks when we're not all working from home, but there are, let's say 25% of us decide that this is the way we want to go forward and the company agrees. I think it could be more, but maybe it's just 25%. How do I articulate the security I want as a company and the support that is needed for the employee or the contractor at home? How do I articulate that? And Mike has already stepped on that by saying that we need a plan. So the plan is going to be a little more extensive than the teleworker policy that we wrote in 2014, 2015. It's going to have to delineate some of the measures that we want for security and some of the priorities we're going to put on support for those workers that stay at home. And how do I audit everything that's being done, and is it being followed at home? So some companies, especially those that are already under SEC regulation or already under compliance like ISO or NIST or FedRAMP, they already have to monitor that machine or machines no matter where they are. Whether they left the office or they're at your house or they're in your car, those machines are having to be monitored, whether they're iPhones that belong to the company with data on them or they're your laptop, whatever it is. So just remembering that audits didn't stop because we went to work from home, and in the future, audits won't stop because we have remote workers. That is an extension of the office. And then when you think about that, what are we going to audit? How are we going to see it? How are we going to manage what is going on that laptop on my personal network? There are tools that prevent data leakage, tools that we use for monitoring the laptop, tools that we use to lock down a certain segment of the network so that no one in your household can get to the laptop but you. It's like you working on your machine with your printer and your monitor and your keyboard and your mouse, and that's it. And everyone else in the house is watching Netflix. There are ways we can segment your home network or make suggestions to segment it that prevents or reduces data leakage. And then how often now should we train people on working securely at home? We used to just train once a year, a basic information security awareness training. When you started working, a basic information security awareness training. Now we need a separate work from home information security awareness training. What is that extra due diligence I, as an employee or a contractor, are going to be requested to do when I am working from home? So this is going to be a future thing, but this is the perfect time, the absolute perfect time to plan. Absolutely perfect. Next slide, please. So now I want to just dump this back to Mo. Did any other Q&A questions come in for myself or Mike or Jill during this time?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Love the part about information security awareness. That's definitely something that's top of mind even at BPM today, especially with our new largely remote workforce. But at this time, I'd like to remind our attendees that they're welcome to submit questions to the panelists through the Q&A function inside our app. We do have one question already, and I believe this is more directed towards Jill. And that question is, what are the subjects that should be discouraged from being discussed via a video call?
Yeah, so I think in terms of what can be talked about, right, you want to certainly honor sensitive information when you're doing video calls and give people the opportunity to talk about what might be private to them, but not set them up for those kind of questions in a way where they may be uncomfortable. So I think you want to ask open-ended questions and prompt people sharing, but not necessarily ask them to share private or sensitive information. And along those lines, be aware that in terms of coronavirus and who's getting sick, you should never name anyone who has the coronavirus in your company, or even identify families. You want to keep that private unless the person wants to share that information. They are certainly, able to do that, but you don't want to share that kind of private information. So, other than that, it depends on the kind of environment that you have, whether it's totally transparency is sort of the norm, or you tend to be a more private company. Some companies share revenue numbers, some don't. I think it sort of depends on your culture. I can tell you for BPM, it's been an interesting time because our CEO sends out a daily email to everyone and shares a lot of personal information. And I think people really appreciate that connectedness with the CEO. But obviously, you have to have a comfort level with that. to go to that level.
Thank you, Jill. I do have another question from another attendee, and that is, if I'm working remotely, can I work from anywhere? And I guess I'm not quite sure if this is more related to the security aspect or the technical aspect, but perhaps we can address both in our response.
I'll jump in first, Mo, and then Mike probably has a thing or two to say about it. Technically, you can work from anywhere as long as you have internet and you can grab an IP address, absolutely. But if we're talking about working from a place other than your home that has been identified by your employer, or your office, which is your employer, you want to articulate that to your company where it is you will be working. And if it's outside the country, there are sanctioned countries that certain businesses cannot allow their equipment into, and you cannot be on the internet working with your company from sanctioned countries. I don't know if that's where you were going with this, but I just want to throw that out there, that there's some technical pieces and there's some business pieces about that question and answer. Mike, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that is, when working remotely, you want to make sure that you're on a secure connection. You know, I communicate to my customers. We're not working from cafes right now, but internet connections that are not yours and you're getting for free. You have to make sure whatever you're doing work related is over a VPN connection, or make sure that you're on a HTTPS session on a browser. So that's what I communicate to my customers.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I think to sum that up, it really depends on how your infrastructure is set up, whether what you're accessing, and if it's available over VPN, then obviously that gives you some more options in terms of where you're connecting from due to the security that you're establishing through the VPN tunnel. But I do have another question. If we use OneDrive for file storage, then we don't need to also have Dropbox. Do you have a recommended email security company we can look into to send files that should be secured? I think the question is, if we use OneDrive for file storage, then do we need to also have Dropbox? And would you recommend an email security company that we can look into to send files?
So yeah, I can answer that. OneDrive is a one-to-one share. So that means everybody has their own OneDrive folder. You can store your personal files, your employee personal files into that. And then you can share individual files and folders to individual throughout the company. Where customers have historically had problems that we've worked with is companies are used to that one-to-many share. Hey, I have the P drive, I have the U drive. Marketing's up on, marketing folder up on the P drive, go get it there. And that's where Dropbox and Box has really been successful, is you're delivering that one-to-many share, being able to create, the marketing security group, so only marketing people have access to those folders, but you don't have to think about it because they're in the marketing group. Now, Microsoft's done a really good job about leveraging the SharePoint product to allow for that. And we've pushed our customers to build out their SharePoint infrastructure on Office 365 to replace that P drive. And that's kind of how it works. If you're a Google shop, the same thing is in Google. So if you're have Google Drive and you're on the basic plan, you have that one-to-one share. But if you go up to the business plan, you have shared drives, and then you can create team and department for that one-to-many share. So I hope that answers your question. The secure email, I've had clients use an application called Send Safely. It's the most secure email transfer protocol. How it works is in Send Safely, you go and put a file or folder, and then you email that link to into whoever you're sending it to. The other option, if you want to keep it into your native application, is to stop sending attachments. Really, when you send attachments out into the world, you never know where they go past the email that you're sending. So that Word document, that Excel document, it used to be PDFs, but everybody can edit a PDF now. So think about, if you're using Dropbox, if you're using Box, send the link to a customer, to a colleague, to a contractor you're working with. And then they get the link, they can go and download the file. But if you want to take security one step further and say, hey, I'm going to give you access to this file, but you're not going to be able to download it, but you'll be able to read it, you want to own your content.
Hey, Mike, I have a follow-up to that. So this actual attendee was asking about OneDrive, would it be possible to securely share files through OneDrive with external sources? Meaning, can their tenant be set up in a way that they can, and would that be encrypted and safe?
Yeah, so the same way that I just gave the example on Dropbox or Box, if you send the link to the file using OneDrive, then the recipient will receive the email, they'll see the link and be able to retrieve the document, and that'll all be done securely. Okay,
great. Another question I have is, what are your thoughts on NordVPN? I have a question from an attendee. What are your thoughts on NordVPN or other secure data products for mobile devices like laptops, phones, and tablets?
I have not used NordVPN. I know a lot of people that do use it. I've heard good things. If you're looking at a VPN as a service, and there's no reason for your employees to VPN back into your infrastructure, I think Nord is a great option. Most of our customers that have a remote workforce, we have VPN available for them. And the security policy is that they are on VPN when they're in unsecure, unknown areas. You want to make sure that that traffic, no matter what they're doing, is encrypted in transit. And VPN is really the best option for you. But if you do have the option to roll your own VPN, I highly suggest that. One product that we have rolled out, Palo Alto has an excellent VPN as a service that I've done for a couple customers.
Thank you, Mike. I have a question. If I'm a small business and can't afford to buy laptops for this new remote workforce, are there any options for me to allow them to access and work?
So if you're a small business and you're forced to have your employees use their personal computers, the biggest risk, and Sarah could probably add to this, is that you don't know what is on that employee's computer. You don't know if they have antivirus. You don't know what programs are running. And so what you really want to do is you want to make sure that you control your environment. So if you're going into the situation, make sure that all of your files are up on a cloud. Make sure that the employees can edit the documents in a cloud environment. Use Office 365, the online version. Review your files and folders on your cloud environment and not allow them to be opened up natively. Maybe you have to disable, OneDrive syncing application, or Dropbox or Box application syncing to not allow the employees to be able to sync files up and down from their personal computer. So by basically, taking all those documents and keeping them in the cloud and keeping them on the browser will protect you the best. Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just add a couple of things, Mike. I think you mentioned the MDM solution. If there is an opportunity to roll the MDM solution to sort of containerize the email on that workstation at home, that's always a great option. The longer we are working from home with non-company assets, the more things we can do and should do. There are very in-depth things we can do at home that people don't do all the time because, you know, they think, well, I just work from home once in a while and it's not a big deal. Or I just look at email on my machine at home. But it is a big deal when, you know, we don't control the viruses and the malware and the endpoint solution and the containers and the email and the syncing and the data leakage potential. So any of that should be planned for during this time.
Thank you, Sarah. And that wraps up our questions. And Sarah, Mike, Jill, I thank you guys so much for joining us today. Just a reminder to please stay up to date with our COVID-19 Resource Center at bpmcpa.com/COVID-19. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I'd like to thank our panelists again for sharing their expertise with us. If you have any questions or would like more information on today's topics, please contact us at bpmcpa.com. You will receive a copy of this presentation and a link to the recording via email. Thanks again, and I'm wishing everyone a healthy and safe day ahead. Bye.